My name is Greg McConkey from Empower Education. Over the next few minutes we're going to look at taps and how taps work and what you as an environmental health worker can legally do as far as repairing household taps. But the first thing we need to remember before we do any work on taps is go and turn the water off the main supply. In a few moments we're going to look at tap function and tap repair for the environmental health worker. But before we do that, we need to look at this little device here. This is called a vacuum breaker, or sometimes called a one-way check valve. It needs to be installed on every outside tap, and the purpose of this is to stop any contaminated water that might be in your hose, for example, being drawn back in the clean water supply for your house and contaminating that water supply. In the videos you're about to see, the tap stands have been set up purely for illustration purposes only and not directly connected to the water supply. To make the vision a little bit clearer, what we've done is actually remove these vacuum breakers. Don't forget though, if you're an environmental health worker and you're installing taps, outside taps in a home, you need to make sure that you put a vacuum breaker on that tap. Okay, now in this first section, what we're going to look at is how a tap works and some of the parts of a tap. And probably the best way to do that is actually look at a section tap such as we have here. Okay, so now we have the section tap with the actual spindle assembly removed just to make it a little bit easier to see. You can see the actual body of the tap is cast in two partitions. The bottom section here is actually connected directly to the water supply. The top section here is connected to the outlet. In between the two, there's a partition with a hole through the centre. And that hole, in normal circumstances, is covered up by the spindle assembly and the washer at the base of that assembly. So when the tap is turned off, the washer is forced down against that hole in the partition and water can't come through. When the tap is turned on, the pressure is taken off that tap washer or the jumper valve. The water pressure forces up that jumper valve or the tap washer and water flows through the partition, through the hole and out through the outlet. Simple matter of turning the tap off, you force that tap washer back down again on that partition and the tap is turned off. We have a look at the spindle assembly itself. The spindle assembly is quite a simple device. We have the tap washer, such as so. We have a body washer, which is this fibre seal here, which seals or acts as a gasket between the tap body and the spindle assembly. And if we wind that body back, we'll note that inside there's one or perhaps two O-rings. And the purpose of the O-rings is to stop water leaking past that spindle itself, through the body and out through here. Screwing the things back together again, tap washer goes in like so, into the partition, and that's the parts of the tap. Very simple operation. The taps in your home may look a little bit different, but the principle is exactly the same. Now, okay, in this second section, what we're going to look at is some basic tap repair, and in particular, fixing certain leaks on taps. Probably the most common leak is that actual leak through the throat of the tap here. And that is normally caused by the tap washer itself becoming old and perished or damaged, and water leaks past that washer, past the hole in the partition and out through the throat. Now, replacing that tap washer itself would not normally fix the problem, because what you're doing is putting a new washer on an old seat. As water leaks past that washer, it runs over the seat and gradually cuts a groove in that seat. So the new washer will sit down on a rough seat and it won't seal. It's a little bit like water rushing down the driveway, an old gravel driveway. It'll cut a groove in the driveway, and the same thing will happen here. As water runs across that brass seat, it'll cut a groove. So what you need to do before you put the new tap washer assembly in is cut a new seat. Now, there's a number of cutting tools for doing that, and one is this manual device, which will, if used correctly, cut a reasonable seat. The trouble is they're fairly hard to align, and the big coarse teeth, particularly if the tap seat is serrated and worn and got grooves in it, will keep catching, and it's fairly hard to use and get a nice, neat, firm seat. What I recommend environmental health workers get is the device that plumbers would normally use, which is this hydroseal unit. It fits on the end of a cordless drill. The cordless drill fits in here, and the parallel cutting blades here guarantee a nice smooth cut, and the fact that the whole device screws into the top of the tap body where the spindle assemblies come out of guarantees a perfect alignment. You screw it in there like so, you attach a cordless drill to the top, and with a bit of pressure you can cut that seat, and you're pretty much always guaranteed of getting a perfectly smooth seat. Take that unit out, turn the water on fractionally just to flush out some of those shavings. So go back to the main supply, turn the water on briefly, flush out those shavings, and then it's a matter of just getting a new tap washer, putting it in the spindle assembly, screwing it back into the body, and you're almost guaranteed that tap won't leak anymore. Okay, we've just looked at repairing a leak through the throat of the tap with a damaged tap washer. Another common place taps leak is actually through the spindle assembly. In other words, water will be leaking out through this section here. And the reason for that is that the O-rings inside, which are designed to stop that leak, become old and perished. So what we need to do is show you how to replace those O-rings. And rather than do it on this tap here, it's best to do it on a spindle that you might normally take out of your basin or your kitchen sink, and the handles remove on these taps, so it's a little bit easier to see. If we just screw the spindle itself right out, you'll notice the O-rings are exposed. Take that washer off out of the way. If you get a very small screwdriver, you can pop it underneath that O-ring and carefully pull that O-ring out, like so. You then get a new O-ring with a little bit of grease. Perhaps put a bit of grease on first. Make sure you use waterproof grease. The new 8 or 8.5 O-ring. Slide it over the top, and that will stop any leaks through that spindle itself. While you've got the spindle assembly out, it's normally a good idea to get what's called a tap bonnet repair tool, which is this unit here, and run that up through the centre of that spindle housing. And what that does is cut out any contaminants, any calcium, any old grease, any muck that might be inside that tap assembly, and makes it a lot easier to turn, particularly with the old people with arthritis. Sometimes old taps are hard to turn, so if you clean those out with that tap bonnet tool, you've got a nice smooth action on your tap. Put it back together again with a little bit of grease. Again, put a little bit of grease on that thread before you put it back together. Waterproof grease again, and screw it into there, and you'll have a nice smooth action on your tap, and it also won't leak. While you've got it apart, it's also worthwhile replacing that body washer. It's only a few cents worth. Take that off, replace it with a new body washer. It'll stop any leaks around the body of the tap where it joins onto the spindle assembly. Last but not least, what we're going to show you how to put a stainless steel seat inside a standard tap. Now the brass in these tap bodies it's quite a cheap casting, and it's not particularly durable, so as soon as the tap starts to leak, the body starts to wear away, and you get that problem with worn seats. One way to solve the problem is fit a stainless steel seat into that body, and stainless steel being much tougher will stop that problem with seats wearing away. Now to do that, you need a stainless steel seat kit, which you can buy from most hardware stores or plumbing suppliers. It comes in a number of parts. One is this tap arrangement with an assembly so it screws into the tap body, a stainless steel seat, and an Allen key to allow you to fit those devices. Okay, what we need to do is make sure the seat's cut, which we've just done previously. So the seat in there has been cut by a hydroseal reseating tool. Nice smooth seat. We place our tap into the body like so. Put the socket on the top of that tap, place the Allen key in there, apply a little bit of pressure till you feel it start to bite. Then you can take the pressure off and screw that tap down, and what it's doing is actually cutting a thread in that seat, or that hole in that partition, which will allow us to screw the stainless steel seat into there. Make sure that you don't force it all the way down to the base, against the base of that tap body, because if you do, what you're going to do is put too much pressure on that thread you've just cut and strip the thread. So if you force it all the way down, you'll actually strip the thread. So as soon as you feel it becomes soft again, take the pressure off, unscrew the tap tool and remove the whole unit. So you turn the mains water supply back on again briefly, flush out any shavings that may be there from cutting the thread. Get your stainless steel seat, again a little bit of waterproof grease, and use this end of the Allen key, drop it over the thread you've just cut and screw in your new stainless steel seat, and you'll guarantee that'll last pretty much forever. You won't have any more damage to the seat occurring. Okay, so that's about it. Hopefully these tips gives you a little bit of an understanding of how taps work, the parts of the tap, and what sort of repairs you can do legally as an environmental health worker in Western Australia. Thanks.